Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, in fact. It looks very dark today. And we are here for the 4th IDTDS seminar to be conducted marking the World Environment Day under the theme deforestation. I can't remember the theme now, but it's there. If I can have a look at the theme, deforestation, land restoration, desertification, and drought resilience. So there are two eminent speakers here. I have to thank both Professor Kotagama, one of our own, and also Dr. Niranga Alahacoon, again, has had his training from University of Colombo. So welcome, and I also want to welcome all of you for being here and those who are joining us online. So the first speech is going to be given by Professor Sarath Kotagama. As an iconic figure, I don't think we need an introduction, but still I have to say a few words about Professor Kotagama. Actually, Professor Kotagama, I will share my own experience about Professor Kotagama because he entered the University of Colombo to complete a degree in zoology in 1969. And I entered 10 years later to complete a degree in physics in 1979. And his presence at the time was felt by many of us. Even though I was not one of his students, his presence was felt by many of us. He was there at the basketball court when we were in the university grounds. And I still remember the walks he had with Dr. Tissa Herath then at the beginning, down all those aisles and corridors, and also later by himself. And of course, he was a complete academic and a real person full of character. Now, if I start with his academic excellence, I think we all are very happy to receive these highest awards given to us for the research conducted by us at universities like President's Award for Scientific Publication. He was a quiet character, but he has 13 such awards, President's Award for Scientific Publication, starting from 2004. And on top of that, he has so many other recognitions nationally and internationally. So if I just try to mention those, there are 18 big recognitions at national and international level. Among them, he has Deshamanya Parisaravedi Samajadaj Award. That's national award given by government of Sri Lanka. That was in 2007. President's Environment Award in 2004. And being a person from Uva province, he has Nijabima Harasara Award from Uva Provincial Council. Then Institute of Biology, Sri Lanka, again, a special felicitation in recognition of his contributions. Then academically, he has been recognized by two other universities by awarding him Doctor of Science honoris causa from Sabaragama University, as well as the Southeastern University. And at national level, his contributions are so many, and he has been a part of policy making in relation to environment in this country. And he has been an advisor to the minister once, Minister of Environment, and then also a director of the Department of Wildlife Conservation. And it is not only those positions that we can find about him, his contributions as an academic at interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary level. So I think when we talk about this IDTDS, interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary studies, I think he's an ideal person to address an audience like this. So I'm very proud and happy to welcome Professor Sarath Kotagama, who has been honored with Vidya Jothi in 2007. So let me invite Vidya Jothi, Professor Sarath Kotagama, for this first presentation. I want to remind the audience that he was one of our past general presidents also. Which was the year? Yeah, 2012, he was the GP of SLAAS. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Considering the time that I have, I was not going to speak on detail about either restoration, desertification, or drought resilience. So when I come here, I'm happy that somebody is going to talk on drought resilience. But as I have always been, I like to be critical of what is being said when we do things, because sadly, it is the lack of this critique that has put us into the position that we are in this country with respect to, I believe, in education or research or academic exercises. We always just seem to follow the line, not recognizing that things are changing, and these changing subjects, content, and the way the words are used, very much in the English language, but very badly in the Sinhala. I don't know about the Tamil, but in the Sinhala. So it's very pathetic sometimes that our attempts to achieve an objective doesn't happen because we don't understand the reality and the inner feelings of the exercise that we sometimes try to do. We let our emotions take over and work through that. So I thought I will say something to clarify some of these terms that have been used and how we can contribute to this in a general sense, because it needs to be interdisciplinary, and I'm going to finish more from saying multidisciplinary or no discipline at all. That is where the citizens will come in, because the citizens have no real discipline, or they have everything in their head. So not either interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary, no discipline. Not discipline mean behavioral, but subject-wise. Right, so just want to start giving you a general picture of where we are in terms of the environment, because this is linked up with the World Environment Day. We start all of these things in around the 1960s, but the first environmental issue is way back in the 1930s, really in the streets of London, where the houses were built such that the defecant were thrown onto the narrow areas behind each house, and people were bathed when they accidentally thought that those were footways to go between the houses. Because you have the bucket system, not the flush systems that we have today, and people from one house used to throw it over the window onto the pathway in between the buildings. So they realized that it's also throwaway culture at that time, throwing away your feces just out of the window. So the problem was thought, that's an environmental issue, we should do something. So there are many like that, but then the real current thinking of the environment actually was initiated by this lady. She's a marine biologist, so one can think, what has a marine biologist got to do with things on land, right? But she recognized that if you get up in the morning and you don't hear the sounds of the birds, then it is going to be a huge dilemma. And why you don't hear the sounds of the bird? That's why it means silent spring, because of the chemicals that were used for production of food. So that was established. People realized that we should be doing something, and it led to the movement very much in the developed country, US, where Senator Gaylord Nelson took over the baton and canvassed to do a program across the world, which resulted on the 22nd of April 1970. Today we call it the Earth Day. More than 1 million people in different parts of the world, plus, as this advertisement says in the New York Times, more than 1 million in the US has joined, held hands, and had a lot of functions to say that there is an environmental issue, we must do something about it. That led to the Stockholm Conference in 1972 with the theme Only One Earth. We have this, still we are talking about it, which resulted in the declaration of 5th of June as the World Environment Day. So that's why we keep on. But what is very interesting at that conference in 72, that the developing countries which were represented by Madam Gandhi as our spokesperson at that time, showed very clearly that the issue of the environment had to do really with poverty rather than some of the things that we talk today, like climate change or, let's say, lost forest and so on and so forth. it was very clearly shown that our poverty, not poverty, and need the greatest polluter. That is how she ended the speech. So everybody agreed, yes, if we develop the developing countries, then we won't have. Many don't recognize this, but if you think of Sri Lanka, we did go through this at that time. This is in the 70s. If you look at Colombo, you will realize this. Only if you reflect back and ask, 55% of the persons in Colombo are shanty dwellers and are living in shanties. Today, of course, they are living in multi-story buildings. That is because the government has provided much of it. But how did it happen? Because they had to earn something and they had to come to Colombo for that purpose. So immigration was a huge problem in the 70s into the developed parts of the world. Not just only Sri Lanka, but across the world, everywhere this was happening. And here in Sri Lanka, it was very clearly evident because everything was happening in and around Colombo, or maybe Kandy or Galle or things like that, nothing in the village. So everybody came in, they did the jobs or did odd jobs or whatever we want to call it, and they had to spend the time in the night and they just occupied the landscape outside the houses, which ultimately is illegal. So again, you will see Colombo had a lot of illegal houses, a lot of illegal settlements, which is what ended up as a government policy with President Premadasa to enable the big buildings to come up. What was happening in the village was the other side of the story. If you couldn't get to the town to earn something, you should earn something by destroying the landscape to produce something. And that is where the forest destruction started. And much of the forest destruction of the time happened because they were clearing it for what we call slash and burn cultivation. So we were destroying the forest on one side, and we were having the immigration environmental problems in the cities. So that was happening because people were poor. This was the case in the developing countries. So we requested to help us to get over poverty, and then you won't have environmental problems, because that was the biggest environmental problem. So we were funded. For 10 years, we were given all grant money. If you look at the money that had come into Sri Lanka over the last 60, 70 years, you will see 70, 80, up till about 90, we were getting ample grants, enough grants to develop. But there was an issue. We go back to 1982, 10 years later in the environment, and then we realized that all the environment problems that the developed countries spoke of in the 70s were now present in the developing countries. What went wrong? Now, because that was recognized, a commission was appointed and the report came out, which was referred to as Our Common Future, which Madame Brundtland headed as the Prime Minister of that day in Norway, and the only person who was a Minister of Environment of that era, of that time. So with 21 other persons, she comes up with the report, and that is where the word sustainable development was defined for us. But the word was already there much earlier in 1980 with WWF, IUCN, and UNEP, and we were working on certain other aspects, where we were talking about it with respect to wildlife conservation and not the general environment conservation or environment and development scenario. So development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. This is the clear definition of sustainable development, which the agenda even today is. There is no difference in this. It's just cosmetizing this in different ways that we have been doing, but this stands. The clear word here is meet their own needs. So there is a long way to understand what are the needs. And then the sustainable development was evolved. A 430 plus booklet is available, which is what was adopted in 1992 at the Rio Summit, which is the Earth Summit Agenda 21. Even today, that is the Bible for sustainability or sustainable development. But the thing is, how many of us have even read it or to understand what is in it? So along with it, two other very important conventions were agreed upon, the Biological Diversity Convention and the Convention on Climate Change. UFCCC means United Nations Convention on Climate Change. We go to 2002, and yet we have not been implementing sustainable development. This is again on Stockholm Day, on the Environment Day, and we see we are still nowhere with respect to implementing the environment. But in 2000, a study was commissioned to find out why we are not doing what we are doing. Have we really not understood what is happening in the world? So this is referred to as the 2000 UN Millennium Summit Conference product, Millennium Ecosystems Assessment. A very simple mindset that is required to understand this. If you were sick, you must get yourself checked to find out whether you were sick, or you can live without it. But here we had a sick patient, the world was sick, we needed to know what is the magnitude of that sickness. So 38 assessments were done by over 900 top scientists of the world, and the verdict was very clear. All of these, just a sample of the graphs that came out, clearly show that something was happening in the near past. From around 1950s, everything was leaping and going forward and reaching sky high. That was the issue. So they said, we are spending Earth's natural capital, putting such strain on natural functions of Earth that the ability of the planet's ecosystem to sustain future generations can no longer be taken for granted. At the same time, the assessment shows that the future really is in our hands. We can reverse the degradation of many ecosystem services over the next 50 years, but the changes in policy and practice required are substantial and not currently underway. So even knowing that the Earth is sick, we were not doing what should be done. So how do you expect? We go to Rio with that, and we come up with a new model, and this is for the first time that in the global sense that the voice of the people went into the UN documentation. All previously, it's the technocrats who were developing the environmental dogmas and the theories and the programs, but here we had for the first time, it was done outside the UN body, it was done within the People's Forum and taken to the UN Forum for endorsement. So that is Rio Plus 20, the future we want. So it was a people's document that was endorsed by the UN for the future. In it came the ideas of green economy, where the green subject comes in. So basically what we have had over the years is 72 to 2002, you have poverty, the cause for environmental degradation, changing to environmental degradation, the cause for poverty. So now if you want to get over poverty, you have to get over environmental degradation. How do you do that? And for that, you have to adopt sustainable development. So it's a flip of the coin, which makes it very interesting if we understand the science of what is happening. So here I come to part of the topic of the day, which says, why do we need restoration? Obviously, there must have been something that have destroyed, because you are restoring, you are trying to put back what was there. So this is just simply what happened to our forest in this country. At the very early days, you can see the cinchona comes, the coffee comes, different products come in, and everything results in a reduction in the forest cover, while tea grows up and continues, and the forest cover keeps coming down all the time. The graph is self-explanatory, don't worry about the figures, but that is it. But in the midst of this, there is a very interesting person, John Baker, who wrote this when he did visit Singaraja and wanted to write a comment. The English is fantastic. You must read it very carefully to understand what he is trying to say. Before the Sinhalese first came to Ceylon, so there were no Sinhalese in Ceylon. The whole of southwest of the island, the low country wet zone, was probably covered by tropical rainforest. We know that, right? It is only when the Sinhalese came to Ceylon that you follow. The Sinhalese are accustomed to cut down virgin forest. So it is not the citizens of this country, but the Sinhalese who came from somewhere. See, very interesting. Now this was written in 1936, right? Whether he understood the politics of today or not, I don't know, but it is very interesting for me, because that's what I keep on saying. Whoever who made us do these things are not those who were in this country of that time. I have had personal interactions with one president where I said, yes, I don't belong to them. When he said that I am a Vedda, I said, yes, I am a Vedda because I don't belong to them. But the fact is that this is the reality of somebody seeing it happen. Anyway, we have lost much of our forest. Now, to enable ourselves to achieve our final objectives, I bring you a different story here. To build a family, you marry the one you love or love the one you marry. But to keep the family, you can't do anything with love. That is not enough, because we have no, when poverty comes through the door, love flies out of the window. Now you don't want that to happen, because then the family will fall, which we know very clearly. It is happening very many times now. That you need wisdom. You need to have wisdom to keep your family. So the moral for conservation or environmental protection, whatever you want to say with the environment, is like, to be a conservationist, you need love, which is the heart. And why the heart? Because very strangely, I have never found any love story that I have read, maybe I have not read enough books in the world, that has nothing to do with the heart. There is nothing in the head there, because the head is a bad story. All love stories have to do with the heart. Arjun, what do you say? Huh? I have read some love stories, but I can't. But to do conservation, you need the head. So the same way to keep the family, you need the head. The same way you must have love for nature, but to keep nature, you need the head. So you need the heart to be a good conservationist or a good protector or a environmental manager, whatever it is, but to manage it, you need the head. The love is along, not enough. Now that is where I go to restoration, because the idea of restoration is to restore, bring back what was there. There are many times where we are using words in the wrong way. It doesn't really give the right meaning, because sometimes it indicates something because it is jargon, and we are expected to understand the jargon. A clear one of this is adaptation. Now, when I try to explain that to many people, they say, yeah, we can adapt, no? So I said, then you want to be a different species. So they said, why are you saying that, sir? I said, in evolution, when we say a species are adapted, it means that it has changed into a new fellow. But in humans, when we say you are adapting, you don't become a different fellow, but you be the same fellow. So I said, we have a word for that in English. You adopt something. So why don't we use adopt instead of adapt? Well, that was one of the words that I challenged the ICCC, the International Climate Change Convention Science Group, and I said, sorry, if you can't do otherwise, I can't contribute. That was in 1986. So we have been in the picture, but I moved out, I shouldn't say we, I moved out, because it is very difficult to take these things to the people. You are taking two angles to the people. That is where the problem is. So can you really restore a forest that is lost? We don't argue this, because you see the two words mean so many different things. Restore, any intentional activity that initiates or accelerates the recovery of an ecosystem from a degraded state. Recovery of an ecosystem from a degraded state. How can you recover it? That is what is important, because what we are doing in terms of the word of restoration is not exactly that. So we need to be very careful, which I will show you, did pop up last year, and that was not publicized adequately. And I'll come to that quickly. Just rehabilitation, just to show a different. Then, why should we restore? Look at it. Because the ecosystem services have been disrupted, we want to bring it back. Mitigation, impacts to ecosystems elsewhere. Habitat threatened on endangered species, aesthetic concerns or moral reasons, improving human livelihoods, empowering local people. This is all what you get in the literature everywhere. So the restoration as the acid test of ecology. Do we understand how ecosystems work well enough to reconstruct them? We are still trying to learn the functionality and the functions of ecosystems. But here we are doing wonders. So the approach is of two types basically. Passive restoration relies on natural regeneration capacities of the ecosystem, depending on reducing damaging external pressures or drivers, of degradation, stop what is destroying it, and then allow the system to recover. Yes, you can do that as long as it is still within the resilience capacity of the system. Because if you have surpassed that resilience capacity, you are never going to get it back to what it was. But then you need to understand resilience. So how much of resilience do we understand in mending with or manipulating systems? Active ecological interventions designed to drive succession and increase pace of restoration. Drive succession, which means that we understand that the systems are changing and we are only facilitating and helping that change to happen. And the best example comes from Sri Lanka. Unfortunately, we are yet to give proper publicity to that. That is the Performance Arboretum at Dambulla. He did convert a patch of 1.5 to 2 acres, and he calls it in his own words, I brought 400 years into 40. He enabled the dry zone vegetation to take precedence to the scrub and all the changes that may have happened over 400 years to bring to the climax in 40 years. That's according to him. But we know that it is there today. People can go and see it, and you will see that his experiment has worked. So why don't we duplicate it? Where have we duplicated it yet? No. No place. So that is a sad story. Often focus on limited number of ecosystem services. We take a few that we understand and think that that is good enough to achieve the objectives. How good are we in that decision? Particularly beneficial in highly degraded ecosystems. We think that that will be the case. And what we do with it is basically today, fundamentally, what most of the restoration projects are, tree planting. So, in fact, I have a whole heap of talks about trees, so I'm going to skip many of that in time of the problem of time, right? There is no universal recognized precise definition of what a tree is, unfortunately. Might sound very strange, but this is what the science tells us. The meaning of the tree has all of these things, a woody plant, height and size, main stem, developing branches, all of these things can be put together to define a tree. So we have something that we define and then we use it. The tree in our country, in the forest ordinance, includes bamboo, stumps and brushwood, palms, canes, creepers, climbers, woody, or otherwise reeds and trees in all stages of their growth. That is the definition of tree in the fauna on the forest ordinance of Sri Lanka. So if you go by legal terms, bamboo is good enough to grow. Or some climbers, I don't know what these climbers, maybe you want to have different kinds of things that go up, all of that. But we have always been good at tree planting. This is something Madam Irangini Serisinghe, still around. She planted in 1980. You can go and see this in the zoo. It is a massive tree. It is still there, fortunately, right, just near the canteen or the restaurant inside the zoo. And there are a whole heap of benefits of trees, which are all well known somewhat. I wouldn't want to take time, but this is all the types of things for wildlife, energy. Our old late Ray Vijayawardena tried hard to bring thermal dendropower in this country, but still we have not there. We are not still doing it, but of course today it will be difficult because we would be contributing carbon dioxide, so that might be a negative one there. Soil reinforcement, erosion control, protecting child, healing effects, then hug the tree, reduces violence, all these are new, and these things have all been established today by science. Teachers and playmates grow mighty trees of that, bring diverse groups together, unity and spirituality, because we have the oldest tree in the world, recorded tree, so increase in civic pride, access sound barriers, so on, right? Plants as noise barriers, increase property value, enhance basic traffic. So there's a whole heap of values that trees can bring. My argument here is not about any of these things, because these things can be grown. Is mass tree planting the answer to biodiversity and climate change as a means for restoration? That is my problem. Now here comes what was not said by many in the world, because it came out in the wrong time. There was the COP28 going to happen in December, and we were all focusing on carbon dioxide and not talking about anything else. The best way to climate change, plant a trillion trees, was said by this scientist, Thomas Crowworth, way back. And we all jumped on the gun, and we started doing massive tree planting programs. The UNEP has a trillion tree program. All of these things went there. But little did we realize the problems that tree planting has. Most tree planting projects focus on exotics and fast-growing trees, because you have to do it as fast as possible, because you have to see the tree growing, and it is best to do something that is going to do better. Eliminates existing ecosystems, biodiversity, which has emerged over millennia through the interactions of vegetation and herbivores, etc. So question I asked, does tree planting bring back what we have destroyed? Anyway, carbon projects required managed trees planting to claim carbon credit against an assumed degraded baseline, because that went on the carbon money story. People started planting trees to get money, carbon credit, calculating how much of carbon is going to be emitted out, carbon dioxide is going to be absorbed by the plant, and so on and so forth. So the easiest approach is planting large plantations. We have done that very much. Rushed planting of trees in unsuitable environments can lead to large losses of planted trees. That also we have done quite well. So these are things that we have done on the premise of what Thomas Crowworth told us is good. Gradually, the things start changing. Water cycles may be disrupted by tree planting schemes, and so these things start coming in. And then people plant tree for utility more than for biodiversity or carbon. A study was done, and the results come out for 5 years later, things like that. And now the question of whether we were doing the right thing started emerging. Were we restoring the habitat, or were we really destroying the habitat into the future? Tree planting is both a promising and controversial solutions to climate change and biodiversity loss. However, this controversy is largely theoretical because we lack detailed information of how tree planting is proceeding on the ground. A pantropical data set of 174 tree planting organizations to determine the type of organizations involved in tree planting, their geographic locations and tree planting approaches found that the number of organizations have increased by 288%. So we can be very happy that we are doing very good over the past 30 years, especially for profit organizations. So you know what is happening there. These organizations reported planting nearly 1.4 billion trees across 74 countries since 1961. Most frequently, organizations reported establishing agroforestry systems or mixed species and single species plantations, or using assisted natural regeneration, suggesting that tree planting programs are designed to support local communities as well as the environmental objectives. The most frequently reported species were, unfortunately, commercial or utilitarian, and with the top 5 including cacao, teak, moringa, mango, and coffee. Imagine this is across the world study. Despite widespread efforts to plant more trees, there was a pronounced lack of monitoring on websites and in reports. Only 18% of the organizations mentioned monitoring at all, and only 5% mentioned measuring survival rate of plantings. Now this comes out last year around November. And then the big bomb was this, the very man who said plant a trillion trees. Scientists issue warning against commercial tree planting schemes. We should shift focus. We risk reducing natural ecosystems to one metric. One strategy that is being implemented to combat the ongoing overheating of our planet by actually be doing more harm than good, scientists have warned. A new study on commercial tree planting schemes discovered a variety of unintended consequences. Aside from the obvious need to reduce fossil fuel emissions, we should shift focus to conserving and restoring ecosystems. Conserving ecosystems and their functioning will only be possible by prioritizing biodiversity beyond a single monetary-based metric, such as carbon sequestration potential, the study concluded. And he then said in November, stop planting trees, says guy who inspired world to plant 1 trillion trees. It is very interesting when you follow these things in the international publications, how these things dive down and don't come up when it is needed. It was just before COP28, which was in December, and this paper comes out in November. Nothing in the science publications other than where it appeared. No worldwide or countrywide publications. In a cavernous theater lit up with green shapes of camels and palms of COP28 in Dubai, ecologist Thomas Crowther, former chief scientist advisor to the United Nations Trillion Tree Campaign, was doing something he never would have expected a few years ago, begging environmental ministers to stop planting so many trees. Have we done justification for restoration? That is the question that we need to ask ourselves. They can be harmful to biodiversity. Above all, they are really damaging when used, as they often are, as avoidance offset, as an excuse to avoid cutting emissions. Crowther said, who says his message was misinterpreted, but out a more NORCED paper last month, which shows that preserving existing forest can have a greater climate impact than planting trees. So keeping the forest that we have is what we should continue to canvass, rather than going around saying plant trees, plant trees, plant trees, plant trees. Yes, we should plant trees where if we can, but we must be more concerned whether that is for future use, rather than for saying to bring back what millenniums of years were destroyed in a couple of years. Can we reproduce millenniums function? Millions of years of evolution gives you a system which you destroy in a matter of hours, and if you can put it back by planting trees, then we are that millennium. Are we that? Not in science, maybe in thought. So there's a lot that we have to rethink in this. And many other problem-solving things have come out over the years. Still with trees, the very responsible scientists who are here could correct it and turn it into something that is good. I'm just quoting Crowther because I think we need to listen to the science today. And we need to relook at why planting and growing trees matter for climate, people, and biodiversity. All that dialogue comes out afterwards, and this was hilarious. Bill Gates say it is complete nonsense that planting trees can solve climate. You can see 9/26/23, right? Last year, not very far away. Here's why we should do it anyway, and so on. But what caught my eye is this: I don't plant trees. So said Bill Gates on stage at the New York Times recent climate summit. He added that it was complete nonsense to think that tree planting could solve climate change, and didn't mince words about how we felt about that notion. That is what I think should matter to us. Are we the science people, or are we the idiots? What he was trying to say is that the science is not getting interpreted properly. We are just following things for publicity or for whatever sake. So where do we go from here then? Because otherwise we are not going to achieve the objectives. If that be the case, that we can sell to the public also. We must understand what we need to sell properly and so on. So where will the future be? I want to quickly finish because I said we'll go to finish with citizen science, 5 minutes. We will. There is no time left to argue in the point over whether tree planting can solve the crisis. It won't all by itself. First, we must urgently cut fossil fuel use, if that be the case for climate change. But restoring the world's forest in the right way will help us to safeguard the future of the planet and our own future, but it would not possibly bring back the same biodiversity that existed. That myth should be taken off our head. We may be able to bring back some diversity, but we will not ever be able to bring back the diversity that did exist naturally. So with that, I think we should realize that harnessing the people is the only way to make it happen. But we have a problem there. As Albert Einstein says, problems cannot be solved within the mindset that created them. So who created the problem? They are still there. So we in the new world or the new science world should try to think of, I can't be that, no, because I am too old now to say that, but at least those who are young and running should take it over. You have the task to do it, because those who are in power are not going to enable it to be done, because they have different thoughts. There we have the biggest strength, which is the new way of talking about it, harnessing the people for science. My first citizen science lecture was for SLAAS in 1987 in the physics lab of University of Colombo. Right? And then when we talked about people, people are not going to be able to get involved. But today it is very strong. There's a lot of things. Was he not a citizen scientist? Charles Darwin was, today we say, is a scientist. But when he was running around the world on a ship, Beagle and all of that, was he really a scientist? That's a good question to ask now. So they're asking it now, just to show the fact that if you can bring some information onto the table, and that information can have clout and some elements that enable us to trust it, believe it, more than believe it, trust it and accept it, then we have science there. So that's what we are asking for. Public involvement in scientific research activities in collaboration with the scientific community. Citizen science has expanded and evolved with widespread public access to internet and mobile devices, because trying to bring people together is very easy and fast today. So using the technology, we can harness the strengths of many. And there are many research publications that are coming out using the smartphone and so on and so forth. Questionnaires sent out on social media and getting responses back and analyzing them and saying this. How good are they for scientific verification and conclusions is still a question, but you are getting a feel of something. So with that doubt in place, you can see way for you to connect with the natural world through fun activities that generate vital information for the conservation of birds, because it's the e-bird and the things that have been used earlier. So you have a whole heap of these different tools that can come in. The word itself is pretty new. It only comes into the Oxford Dictionary in 2014. If it was an English word before, then it should have been in the Oxford Dictionary, but it comes only in 2014. So it's pretty new. So we have put something together over the years, and we have a fast increase. You can see it grows very fast. So the value of citizen science, significance of citizen science to research greater than perceived. Quality of data collected by volunteers on a project-by-project basis has generally been found as reliable as the data collected by professionals. It's the how you collect the data and consistently you collect the data that matters at the end of the day. So if that is being done precisely and well, then yes, we can use that data as much as an individual pumping around in the forest or walking all over the world and trying to get it. Instrumentations have facilitated this very much. We don't have to often say the digitalization or the instrumentation has done it fantastically, and it helps us a lot. In terms of eBird, this has been demonstrated well, because I am part of the bird story, so I am using eBird here. Carefully designed citizen science projects have been launched. This is just to give you a picture of it. Partnerships with policymakers at the end of the day when the data comes up. An example given here is that generations and validation of the information was done. So US Fish and Wildlife Service validated the accuracy of the bald eagle abundance map generated using eBird. That is, people just seeing the bird and putting it onto the eBird record. That became the result. At the last one you can see citizen science results are used to inform policy. What was done? Recommended use of eBird receive abundance estimates to inform wind energy development, because one of the problems in the US with respect to using renewable wind energy through windmills was the strikes of bald eagles and eagles, etc., etc. So where would you put a windmill without killing eagles anymore, as it was done in the past? So the evidence as to where you should locate it, the green areas, comes from the people's information of having sighted bald eagles in those areas. So it has helped at the end of the day. So citizen science can contribute to us in our efforts to rectify the problems that we are going through today. So clarity and aim of question, of course, is needed. Importance of engagement must be understood. Resources also should be available for the purpose. And then the scale of sampling, how many people should get as much as what we are saying in our own data. When we are collecting it as scientists, we say for statistical purposes it must be strong, and so on. Complexity of the protocols and motivation of the participants to do that. So thinking like a citizen scientist can produce or give us the information that we want to properly restore or even respond to desertification. Just on passing, I will comment that here. The first desertification comment on Sri Lanka really came from Professor Ray Vijayawardena. Many people don't know. You know, he used to have that Bambara. That is his own plane, which he made out of Volkswagen engine. He had flown over many parts of the country close to Colombo, and one of the areas that he had flown over was Vayamba, Kurunagal areas. And he had commented in one of his writings, it is Vayamba that is going to be desertified first in Sri Lanka. In fact, Sri Lanka responded to that. And we had a project funded by UNDP, if I can recall, for the desertification in Vayamba. But if you look way back into history, you will see that the largest number of tanks built by our ancient kings are in Vayamba. The rest is, the other area is southeast. Why must there have been such a large number of small tanks in Vayamba? The soil. It's more sandy. The qualities for desertification all did exist. So this is what Ray said, Professor Ray said, this is what is going to happen if we don't respond to it at that time. So we have had some. There is so much that he has said, but which our agriculture people don't want to follow, which a farmer told me at Monragala, and I thought, my God, how did this guy know that? So I asked him, Mr. Ray Vijayawardena mahattaya වඳුරලා තියෙනවා. නෑ අපෝ ඒ කවුද? ඒ අපේ දන්න මිනිහෙක් නෙවෙයි. He's not a man that, what did he tell me? He said, sir, the English people came to us and told us how to prepare the land. But they told us how to prepare the land according to how they learnt in England, where you have to bring the soil at the bottom to the top when you have to plant. So when we do that, we bring the bad soil to the top. This humble farmer, who I know definitely has not even gone to school, because I know that guy because he looks so much like that, right? He said that is what the English farmer told us to do. English people, and of course he said, කෘෂිකර්ම නිලධාරී කියන්නේ මේකයි. Bring the soil at the bottom to the top. But he said, sir, ඒක ඉංගලන්තයට හරි වෙන්න පුළුවන්. It might be okay for England, but not for Sri Lanka. In England, 3 months of the year, we know the soil is dead on top. So if you want to farm it in the spring, you obviously got to bring the good microorganisms back to the top to get the soil to work. So you have to have a plough that will go and bring the top to the bottom. And that is why our nagula is a surface nagula. Our harrow is a surface harrow, not a deep harrow. But we were taught to do deep harrowing. So you see, this humble farmer made to say that, and I was thinking, my God, this is real science. Where is it from? Citizen. And he said, sir, enna mama pennannan. And he took me to his field and said, ඔයා කියන දේ මේ රේ විජයවර්ධන මහත්තයා කිව්වා ඉංග්‍රීසි භාෂාවෙන් no till agriculture. But we have never ever wanted to follow it. No till agriculture. Don't till the soil. We don't need to do it. Just soften it a little bit and put the seed, because the nutrients are there. We bring the top to the bottom, the bottom to the top, there is no nutrients, then we are forced to provide nutrients. Our agriculture seems not to know this. I don't know. But the farmer knew it. So what I'm saying, that is where citizen science matter. Can we have our science then therefore adopting it or rejecting it through the so-called science that we are trained to do? So I think these are very important. No one will protect what they don't care about, and no one will care about what they have never experienced. David Attenborough. It is really important for you to get involved in looking after the environment because you are part of it. Everything you need comes from it, and everything you do changes it. Environment, Scotland, Government of UK. So I will stop with that because this is what we need to understand. Citizen science can help us a lot in trying to unravel some of the problems that we have. Even there, some of the people used to say, "Sir, Vanate means not our Vanate here in Colombo. Hime yanda baya apita දැන්." So I said, "Hima කොහෙද තියෙන්නේ ලංකාවේ?" Hime means the mountain, forest in the mountain. They had so much good classifications of the forest. These were put together. I forget the author, but the Ayurvedic person, Pereira, I forget his first name, put it in a small book and said, Vanantar Vargikarnya Sri Lankavi. Right? So we have had this understanding. So it's really to bring it back currently that we need to think very strongly to enable the larger part of the people to be part of the science to achieve good objectives. So I leave with that as a challenge for SLAAS because that is where we should be going. Thank you. මේකටම දානවා. මේකටම දානවා.
Thank you so much, Professor Kotagama. Now, before the discussion, we have our second speaker who is going to deliver his speech. Let me introduce Dr. Niranga Alahacoon, who is a talented professional with extensive expertise in remote sensing, geographical information systems, geology, hydrological modeling, and climate resilience. He holds a PhD in remote sensing and currently serves as a researcher in remote sensing and disaster risks at the International Water Management Institute. Additionally, Dr. Niranga serves as a council member for the National Research Council in Sri Lanka. Prior to his tenure at IWMI, he worked as a lecturer at the Faculty of Fisheries and Marine Sciences and Technology at the University of Ruhuna and served as the academic coordinator for the MSc program in disaster management at the University of Colombo. Dr. Alahacoon has been actively involved in CGIAR initiatives on climate resilience, contributing to the development and implementation of innovative solutions such as the AWARE platform, Climate Smart Governance Dashboard, South Asia Drought Monitoring System, and Earth Observation for Agriculture Risk Management platform, impacting more than 10 countries. This involvement highlights the extent and depth of his research expertise. His academic excellence was recognized with the prestigious Astronomer Royal Sir Arnold Wolfendale Memorial Gold Medal for the best postgraduate student in physics in 2023. For his PhD, Dr. Niranga's impressive research track record includes an H-index of 13, an I-10 index of 14, and over 60 publications encompassing peer-reviewed journal articles and IWMI research reports. He has been involved with numerous training programs as a resource person and in remote sensing, GIS, hydrological modeling, disaster risk management, and so on. His contributions to these fields have significantly advanced the understanding and management of climate resilience and disaster risk, making him a pivotal personality in both academic and of these critical areas. So I invite Dr. Niranga Alahacoon for his presentation now.
Thank you very much for introducing me here, and thank you very much for inviting me to deliver a lecture in SLAAS. Also, I'm very happy to deliver a lecture just after legendary professor. He presented a very nice presentation, and he made my life very easy also, because we are talking about the environmental day. He made the path very nicely from history to now, and is taken to the what is the problematic situation we are facing in the country, in the farming as well, at the end of the presentation. It is very nice. But in my presentation, I would like to take you a bit into different area where we are looking at the building drought resilience, which is I'm trying to talk about mostly what is drought and how new technology we can use to understand, monitor, and how it can be used for the building resilience in using the technical manner as well. Before going to my presentation, I would like to introduce from where I came to present here. I'm from the International Water Management Institute, which is the only one international institute which has the headquarters in Sri Lanka. Basically, we are focusing on the climate-related researchers for development. Also, you can see most of our sub-offices are located in different countries where it's developing countries, which we are providing much more capacity and the scientific knowledge for these countries. This is about my institute, and I'm a researcher there. And if I go to my presentation, I would like to basically discuss here, we are talking about the building resilience. In order to build the resilience, we need to understand some of the more important activities. Here, I would like to talk about the drought and how we can monitor the drought and how is the process is ongoing and how the technological interventions we can use easily identify the drought and how it can be easily used by the decision makers and the policy makers. This is the main approach I'm going to look at in this session. I don't want to give the scientific explanation about the drought, but everyone feel it. What is drought? We are talking about the drought when the rainfall is reducing and we try to feel some heat condition and we can see some dryness in your land area and you can see the cultivation is get drying out. These are the symptoms what we can identify just as a indication of the drought. But when we talk about the drought, we are discussing the four components basically. How this four component came into the picture, I would give the name of this one. It's like a meteorological, agricultural, hydrological, and socio-economic. It's just look like a four names. Okay, this just look like a classification of four names. But this classification is coming with the process of the drought, because drought is a slow onset process which is coming very slowly, but it will give the devastating effect for the community. How it can be happen, and now I'm going to discuss how we can monitor the drought. In order to monitor the drought, this is a one component of our resilience activity. In order to monitor the drought, we need to understand the process. It's a very nice process we can see. If you look at this diagram, it will give the whole set of understanding how the process and how the classification is done. If you understand the natural process, drought is occurring when the rainfall is reducing its amount and time duration. When it is reducing, we can easily see this is the onset of our meteorological drought. When it further advances, let's say next 2-3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks time, if the rainfall is still reducing, what we will see? The land is dry. My crop is going to be turned into yellow color, which is the indication of my crop is having some problem. The same thing applies for my agriculture. This is basically, we call this as an agricultural drought, onset of agricultural drought. When further rainfall is delaying and delaying and delaying, what we observe? You look at your well, you will see the water level is very much deep. And your reservoir, it's slowly reducing the water level. Sometimes get completely dried out. This is the symptom of giving the onset of your hydrological drought. Consequences of these all three things, its effect for the social well-being, this has become the socio-economic drought. That's how the process and this for classification is coming. But I wanted to emphasize here how we can monitor these three different drought scenarios by looking at the parameters. We can nicely see what are the different parameters are changing with the main component is the rainfall. It can be change the amount and the intensity, increase the temperature, okay. The wind speed you can see in a different way. But when you further go into the agricultural drought, we can see, as I mentioned, the changing of your crop system. When you go to the hydrological component, we can see the reducing the water level in the reservoir, groundwater level, as well as the river water level reduction. Then these are the symptoms. But how we can understand and map the drought context? To do this one, these are my indicators which represent the occurrence of the drought. Then I convert my indicators into the indices to monitor and map the drought. When I convert these indicators into indices, historically we had a traditional approach. We look at the location level information to understand the drought. How historically it has changed corresponding to the current situation, that a particular location. This is location specific information. Then historically they define different drought indices. Then the technology take up most of this traditional method into new technology by using the satellite remote sensing. With the satellite remote sensing, the best part we can see is we can look at when, how, and which intensity the drought is occurring. Whether it is a severe drought condition, or it is a mild drought condition, or it is just a starting process of the drought. To do this one, we can have, this is little bit technical, like in the different component of our electromagnetic spectrum, we used to generate the different drought indices. Some are single, some are composite index. Then also, based on this categorization, we can define set of indices. I have listed here, but I am not going to give any of these names. If you want more information, you can look at this publication also. This is a very interestingly give remote sensing based indices and the traditional based indices, how we can use them to monitor the drought. Okay, this is that we try to understand what is drought and how we can monitor it. Then our topic today, we are looking at the resilience approach. We are looking at drought resilience. When we talk about the drought resilience, what is our main focus is ecosystem, communities, and economics. Then we try to look at, anticipate this drought situation and try to mitigate its effect, then make a resilience. When we talk about this approach, mainly we need to look at 4-5 key factors. These key factors is coming with the water management, okay? Then the agricultural practices, then it will become with the policy and governance, because we look at the agricultural component, this is the most effective part, then we look at the practices, then it came into the policy and governance, then most importantly we need to link these things with the community practices. How the community react on these components. By looking at resilience component, now we are trying to build the innovative system, how to monitor, how to understand, and how to predict the drought easily and to use it for the decision makers. The most important part is the decision making. In order to look at this decision making, our prime goal is to look at where are the drought hotspots areas. When we talk about drought hotspot areas, at least we need to use some drought indices to map the hotspots. This is the way to look at it. But by experience and by reading the other research papers also, we know how difficult to generate these indices. Due to the lack of data availability, due to the lack of understanding on the data, it's really challenging. And also when you talk about the remote sensing data, the knowledgeable people and the practices are limited. Then we need to look at what are the innovation and innovative approach we can look at it. Even if there is a decision making person in the office, if we don't know much about how to calculate the index, how we can analyze this one, they can give the basic understanding on what is the current situation. Then they can take a decision on scenarios. To do this one, as an International Water Management Institute, we developed the South Asia Drought Monitoring System, which is enable early warning, drought monitoring, and drought decision support system, and online drought bulletin. These are the major 4 components where people can easily access the data, easily visualize the data. I can show you one simple example which has done in Sri Lanka to look at the meteorological drought condition, which is on 2023. This is in August 2023. In order to generate these 2 maps, it's a very comparable, very easily anyone can understand which area you have the high drought, okay, which year in 2023. This is the meteorological situation is happening. To generate these 2 maps, it will take only 15 seconds for you using the system, which is highly technical. It's big spatial data processing using the cloud platforms. This is integrating the Google Earth engine and visualization capabilities. It's even, I don't need to be there. The director DMC, he can sit and look at what is the current situation every time. That's how we can understand the situation. This is the meteorological component. Then when you look at the agricultural situation in the country, yeah, I'm giving the evidence also. This is as much as possible, take a photograph to represent where the area is become dry. The same representation you can see in the maps as well. This is how agricultural situation in the country we can visualize. Even we can go up to 10 meter resolution with 10 by 10 pixel level, very much good information, it is visible. Then as I mentioned you, the hydrological drought, how we can look at this one? Do we need to measure the water level? And this is also become one in situ measurements. For this one also we did the one survey and analysis. Professor earlier told that in the Vayamba and Anuradhapura, this area has a lot of reservoirs. Why? This is because of, he mentioned this indication of the desertification. To overcome with this one, they built so many reservoirs. It's also correct, and this is also linking with our the geographical settings as well. In our dry zone, it's very dry. We are getting the rainfall. These days, we can discuss about this one based on the climate change concept as well. But in history, we know about this huge drought happened. Then that time kings try to develop these reservoirs. What we are doing nowadays to understand what is the hydrological drought situation, we use remote sensing data to measure the available surface water extent. When you look at the Anuradhapura district, we can see more than 70% is depleted in 2023. The Victoria Reservoir, you can see in the red color, that is the water availability. It's very less. That's why they stopped the hydropower generation as well. Then this can be generated within less than a minute time in front of your system. Then it's very effective for the decision making. But decision making also very important based on the scientifically proved information. Not just by doing something and getting output. Also, we are trying to provide this knowledge sharing by developing the bulletin. We can share with the people the same thing inbuilt in our South Asia drought monitoring system. This is looking at whole South Asia, but it has a privilege just to look at separate countries as well. I don't have time to demonstrate that one. This has so many information inside. But now we talk about what is drought, how to identify the drought, and how to measure the drought, and how to monitor the drought. What else? We nicely understand what is the drought and how we can measure it, how we can quantify it by using the different index. What else? This is not enough. Then we need to look at proactive approach rather than the reactive approach we are using at this moment. What we are looking at in reactive approach, we are waiting for something to happen, then we are try to mitigate it. But in new approach, we are looking at, we call this as anticipatory action. We are looking at anticipatory action based on preparedness, readiness, and active phases. Before hit the disaster, we empower the people to take the action. To do this one, we have developed aware platform which is enable early warning, early action, and early finance as a combination. Early warning, it's understand what is going to happen in future. In early warning also, we look at the short range, medium and long range information. Then we look at it scientific approaches. Then look at the what is happening in next 2 weeks, 3 weeks time by using the different indices. Then provide the warning and trigger the activities through the threshold of different indices, give alert to the people and look at how the financial component connect for them. It's like before happening the disaster, we empower people to react for the disaster. This is basically looking at the anticipatory action. In this system, we develop the GND level anticipatory action and digitalized in the system. Anyone can use it to visualize and take the action. This is a very complicated but user-friendly system to understand. I will show you one information. This is the basic representation of the forecasting. In the forecasting, we are looking at short-term, medium, and long-term range forecasting. Also, we are providing the alert dashboard, which is look at different parameters and thresholds to alert the triggers, whether it is in the preparedness trigger, readiness, or active. Active means people need to evacuate. Before evacuation, we need to provide them the assistance and the compensation. That is the anticipatory action built in the digitalized system. This is one approach. But to be resilient, this is also one component. But what else we can do? We need to look at risk transfer in solution. How we can transfer the risk from farmers to something else. How we can transfer the risk from people to another part by looking at the insurance component. But here we are not talking direct insurance. When we talk about the insurance in Sri Lanka, agricultural insurance, farmers will get irritated because they are not like it. The solution is not just the insurance. We are providing the bundle insurance. We are bundling insurance with the seed system, fertilizer, and climate and agricultural advisories. When we package this one, it coming with a very good product for them. They are ready to buy this product. We have tested so many places and it's very much successful. But to do, when I talk this whole set of scenarios, we can't do it alone. We need the institutional coordination. Med department, irrigation department, NBRO, disaster management center, key institution. The coordination is much important. Through their coordination, we can reach up to much success level in future. This is the basically I wanted to give you about the information, about what I wanted to talk here, how to link natural process in the decision-making process with the different activities. My take-home message here is the institutional coordination, knowledge management, and developing the innovative approach are the key. Now people are talking about the AI, and Professor also mentioned in the citizen science how they are progressing. We also need to progress up to that level. We have to use the traditional knowledge with the new technology. Then only we can succeed in a coming future. So this is my presentation, and thank you very much for listening me, and if any question or clarification, we can discuss all the time. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Before the discussion, I think there are some formalities. That is to give a token of appreciation to both speakers, Professor Kotagama and Dr. Niranga Alahacoon. So let me invite, I can see General President here, Professor Ramani Vijayasekara and Professor Preeti Udagam also, who coordinated the activity and invited Professor Kotagama to give a token of appreciation. Professor Mahesh Javira is there. Please come here. Preeti should be. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Professor Mahesh Javira should be here because who invited, come. May I invite Dr. Niranga Alahacoon also to give a token of appreciation. Yeah. So now we can start the discussion at an informal level, I think, and there might be some questions coming from the people who joined online. So I think I will check that. In the meantime, I think we can start the conversation. Yeah. Does anybody want the mic? Yeah, I will check.
My first question is to Professor Kotagama. Now, when they had development programs, now 1,000 tourist hotels or 100,000 tourist hotel rooms or something like that, they removed the coastal vegetation in few weeks' time. Okay, but we have to really look after the coastal belt because there is what you call the coastal degradation. So isn't it good to look at what the vegetation, what type of vegetation was there, and grow them in a way that it will help the tourist industry and also for coastal restoration, not restoration, just to really recover the situation. Is it okay, or is there any other way to do it? Actually, I was thinking by looking at aerial photographs, we can have an idea of what was there earlier. We can even identify the plants. So we can use those plants to make the place recover. And also, we can plant it in a way that it will help the tourism also. So, do you think that it's okay to do, or whether there is any other way of restoring especially the coastal belt?
Yeah, I think, thank you for asking that question, because it has two very important elements, which again, those who want to do so-called restoration don't understand. One is restoration, the other one is re-engineering. So your question has both. The main part, is it okay? Yes, it is okay, because you have a specific idea to bring back the coast that existed, but you won't get back what the millions of years evolution, yet you will get back what is beneficial for the purpose. So that's good enough. I think that is what is really required to be understood. Because if you are going to restore a forest, which is the misnomer in the terminology, you are not going to get back what was there a million years. But if you are going to restore back the system that can help, that part is what is missing in most of the restoration programs. The definition of for what? Now you were very specific, definition for tourism or to bring back the structure of the beach as it was. So it can be done. So there it is engineering component there, because if the beach has been washed away, if the trees that existed had been washed away, you will have to engineer to bring the structure back to a point. I don't believe you can do it to exactly what it was, but to a point where the trees come. So there's nothing wrong, but it must be understood that it is for that purpose. Otherwise we say, well, it didn't work, because your objective is somewhere else, and here you are planting just to get people to come together and whatever it is. So that's where I think it's important. So when I say about restoration, I often say tree planting, hold it, I am not for tree planting. I am for doing something for symbolism, yes, but not really for tree planting if you don't know what for it. What are you expecting from tree planting? If you say it is for commercial purpose, fantastic. You know that you are going to make money out of planting trees. So that second part of the purpose of the tree planting is much more important in some sense than the action that you are going to do, because that is the one that you get criticized over time and you forget it, which you shouldn't forget if you are with the environment, because you are trying to put back some things that you have lost. At the same time, you have to remember you can't do that, but you are trying to do something differently for the future.
We can allow it to recover.
Yeah, and then you will allow it to go, which is the third part then, which is successional opportunity. For if you put the plants in the right proportion, you will enable the succession to happen. So you are bringing in the third science of successional sciences into the picture. So having understood each of those elements, going in is fantastic.
One quick announcement. There are 20 people who have joined online. I guess they can hear me? Yeah. So if those participants who are online have any questions or comments, I request them to put those questions or comments in the chat box. Thank you.
I have one question which may be, I think, applicable to both presenters, because one says not to, plant trees, the other one says basically to go ahead with planting. Because the basic experience in the recent past is that I'm involved in this, the major, whatever the wind power and the solar power projects in Jaffna or maybe in Kilnochchi. One is 700 megawatt, where 1,500 acres to be, gone, and then for the other one, almost 200 acres to be gone. And whenever we are to redo it, or maybe as a mitigation, we were initially told that we had to go ahead with what you call the reforestation or afforestation, right? Either of these two would be all right. So that is the principles on which we work. But later, the forest department has come and told us not to spend on these because they seems to be not working, as Professor Kotagama mentioned, and then asking money for nursery development. What is truth behind this?
That's a very interesting question. Why do you want a nursery if you are not going to plant it?
Exactly. I'm bit perplexed, and I couldn't understand why they won't. And I mean, to be frank, that is what they're asking, and asking us to, build their office, and asking us to, put some solar, the panels on their, the office, and so forth and so on. And the list goes on and on. But when it comes to the actual environment, we don't know exactly what to do. Investors are prepared to do so, but unfortunately, none of them has been properly diverted exactly what to do. Everybody is a bit of a perplexed situation because of that. What do you think? What would be the best?
Well, I feel that partly you should forget about nurseries unless it is for the site. you don't have to do a nursery to plant trees somewhere else. So my first question actually is when you said 4 windmills. Now, how much of those trees will affect the windmill is the first question you will have to clear. If you all are confident, because I wouldn't know that having trees under a 100-foot windmill is not going to affect the efficacy of the windmill, definitely bring back the trees. Because this is, I have suggested this in a different way, in a different thinking, because one of the problems that people came up with the windmills is the bat death has increased. The number of bats that have dying with the existing windmills have gone up. Yeah. So I said, why not tenting? Why don't you tent in a way to attract the bats away from the area, which is being done in houses. Bats come to houses because they have a safe refuge. So if you don't have the refuge in the area and they are flying all over, you can do a different thing. But that depends on the height of the windmill. If you have a windmill which is very high, all bats don't go that high. You know, it's the ecology of the bats that you need to know. Most of the bats are within 30-40 feet and not above. But within 30-40 feet, if you can attract the bats away from the windmill by what is called bat tenting, then you can reduce the impact. So in the same way, if you can bring back the vegetation on the ground by planting trees and not affect the wind movement, that's what I don't know. That is your side of the story. Then I would advise that you do that, because it will at least get the environment back. Otherwise, you are going to have a deserted area under all the windmills. Why should you have? But that will be depending on what is the height of the tree. That will not affect the turbulence or the movement of the air on top, whether it will retard the movement, all of that. I'm sure you can have at least 10-20 feet because your windmills are 200 feet sometimes, correct. Very high, right? I think.
Yes,
so
correct.
That is up to
yes, sir, you're correct.
So I don't see why you should do nurseries for that trees.
We got an official letter from the forest department, because we are to reinstate the forest patch in the
area,
in the area.
So
that's what we have submitted. Yeah. But apparently they say that won't help them.
No, that's a very strange way of looking at it. No, the question that they have been told is bringing back the forest under the windmill is not worthwhile. But that is the very negative approach to the environment.
Yes, because
maybe for the forest.
Exactly.
But not for the environment. So
because when it comes to desertification, Dr. Niranga, what would be the best?
You should have trees.
Because as far as desertification is concerned, this area is a very crucial. I mean, we get the rainfall only within 2 months period.
You should be able to suck that water down and keep it.
Exactly, sir. Yes, sir. Yes. Yes.
A blank soil means it will sink faster. But a tree not only will keep it there, the wetness of the tree will bring back what is right at the bottom back again. Yes. And you will have a better atmosphere, more wetter atmosphere.
According to you, sir, what would be the best approach? What would be the best approach?
Revegetate it.
Revegetate in the same
without
area.
Without affecting the objective.
All right.
Windmill.
Thank
the
you.
Power of the windmill. That's all.
That's possible. Yes.
So that gradually the rest of the environment ecosystem will recover.
Your question is like the tea plantation.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Should you have shade trees or not in a tea plantation? Yes and no. Right? That depends on what quality of tea you want. If you want heavy, kahatate, have the shade. Okay. But if you don't want the kahatate, reduce the shade. The shade helps to hold the humidity. That's why they came up with the shade. But at one time, people took away the shade because they wanted different tea quality. So you have to make the decision. So your tea is the windmill, the tree is for you to decide. But bring back what you take away.
Thank you.
That is very important.
Thank you.
Good idea.
any other questions, comments, because we can, yeah. No, they have, yeah, they have been there, but they have left now. Any other comments, questions, I think?
Now, for agriculture, now if you can really study the change in color pattern in the vegetation, it can be natural forests or in plantations, if you have monitored that, that also can be used to really predict a drought.
Yeah, actually.
But you have to have big data. You have to have data for several years. I don't know whether Forest Department is having that kind of data in their, actually in their, what you call, aerial photographs or whatever it is. If you have it, you can use it to predict drought.
Yeah, actually, what we are doing here also, similar approach, we are looking at 20 years of data with remote sense. In the remote sensing data, what we are looking at, for example, very simple index called normalized difference vegetation index, which give the greenness to dryness, means the yellowness, how the health component of this vegetation is giving. The green means very good, the yellow means this is dying. Likewise, we in the remote sensing, we can measure the current situation, how it is happening in everywhere. This is especially we can monitor. Then what we are looking at here, by referencing to the today, and we look at historical data to understand what is the deviation of this point, that particular time period, the deviation of the vegetation condition. Then we call this as a vegetation health index. With the vegetation health, we can especially nicely map, as I mentioned these two maps, we can nicely map those information as you correctly mentioned.
Can you really really relate the color of the soil?
Not,
and also
not the
in the why not the soil?
Soil.
I think the moisture content. You can even study the moisture content by looking at the color of the soil.
To do this one, we need to look at another sensor. We are looking at the surface soil moisture, with looking at the different component of this electromagnetic wave, like the radar images. Through this one, we can measure the surface soil moisture content.
So you can relate it and prepare zonal plans.
We are doing this one here. That's why in the index, I didn't go that detail actually. We can look at the vegetation combination as well as the soil moisture combination. Then we can develop the index by combining them. We call integrated indexes. Through this one, we can measure those information nicely. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we can finish, but one last comment and question to Professor Kotagama. This human science, now citizen science. This term citizen science, where should we start from? School level, or because now I think it is something we have to seriously think about.
Well, citizen science means you start with the citizens, whether they are school or adult or age, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But the initiation should, I believe, SLAAS is the best product. If SLAAS can take up the challenge to initiate the knowledge base required for the methodology of citizen science, not for the knowledge of citizen science. Citizens know the science. We have to give them the needs to how to bring the data to us to make it interpretive. So telling them, look, what you have in yourself is important. Tell us what you know. Because the simple document, those days we had Professor Basnaik. I will recall. Professor Basnaik, who was a mathematician, right, who was part of the school biology program, which is defunct. That didn't exist, but was part of the O-level syllabus and all of that, right, was very much trying to lay that foundation of citizen science at that time. We didn't coin the word that way, but popularize science. Popularization of science,
Yeah.
That is what SLAAS is supposed to be doing. So we can use that. Today we have a terminology which is being very extensively used across the world. Get the citizens' participation to tell us what you know. And that when you start analyzing and looking at it, and then collecting information over time, consistent information. All the information coming from many people, the consistency of that is what makes science at the end of the day. The idea, you see, I have a different way of looking at it because I do philosophy of science and I walk the fire with Professor Carlo Fonseca. So I see science very differently. Right? We must not think science as a belief, but we must see science as a set of data that gives us ideas of acceptance to resolve a problem or to understand a problem. And that is what people think. If every people think the same way, you need to just ask the question, why are you all thinking the same way? There could be reason for that. And that is the reason that matters in science. Science is that. Using that commonness in the common thinking to enable a change if needed, or do nothing. So, SLAAS is somewhat the best platform for that. True, we need to promote science and all of that, but promotion of the regular science is through our end-of-year program.
Yeah.
That is through our research presentations and giving opportunity for you to be open to discussion in the scientific world and all of that. But having done so, trying to get it across to the people is citizen science today. That is the terminology. So because the popularization of science has been one of our main functions. Right.
Yeah,
That's true. Yeah, knowledge. Yes.
Fishermen, by looking at the clouds, to know whether that place is information.
What is needed is the engagement. Engagement is very much necessary. Yeah, okay. If there are no other comments or questions, now we can wind up. Just to deliver a formal vote of thanks, I will invite Dr. Pasan Bandara.
Okay, good evening to everyone. So we had another successful program today. So our seminar series is growing day by day, and we had a very considerable number of participants from online as well. And to go with the flow, we had very nice speakers, very legendary speaker, Professor Kotagama, and also a very practical researcher, Professor Sarath Kotagama and Dr. Niranga Alahacoon, presenting and sharing their wisdom with us, highlighting some of the key things that we need to discuss, where we try to relate some of the current problems as we discussed through the theme of World Environment Day. I would like to focus on a couple of things that that were discussed during the talk, like how we approach scientifically in decision making and solving problems. One of the things in countries like us, we don't really consider these management systems as cyclic systems. We only look at them as like one-way systems. We identify the problem, we somehow make a solution for that, but we don't take time to report or monitor those things. Even we report or monitor things, we don't really understand that we should go back to the problem again and then come back the same cycle again and again until we see a proper solution or something that is really sustainable is occurring or not. We usually make decisions, and then we somewhat think that the decision itself will solve the problem. For example, I can go to organic agriculture, but let me start with something like we ban a product coming from another country. We first apply the ban, and then we then look for replacements. So, but I don't think that's the scientific way to do that. We first look at the data, we first look at what could happen, and then we take precautions and protections, and if the problem happens, then we have the mitigation. That again we have to think first, and then if everything fails or if everything is applied, then we still look at the problem, we assess it, and then we come back to the beginning of the process. It's a cyclic process. And of course, the citizen science, like how underutilize that power in that, the power of the common man. We sometimes focus on people who already will come into science, or maybe they are already in the science stream. Even if we go to the school programs and all that, sometimes we just focus on the people already in science stream. But there is this common man, common knowledge that we don't utilize, but they are very important in data collection and then monitoring, reporting. So if we harness this power, we can probably do like really wonderful things in this country and the world itself, because it's a globe. Some of these problems we are discussing, they are not limited to a country or a region. It's actually worldwide problems. And of course, we have just one Earth, right? So in that sense, I believe that we had a very successful seminar today. And we had a lot of eye-opening discussions as well. And I would like to thank our speakers. Thank you very much for accepting our invitations, coming here, taking time, and it's a really pleasure to have you here. I would like to thank Professor Preeti Udagama and Professor Mahesh Jayavira for coordinating with the speakers and convincing them to come here and deliver the speeches. Thank you, everyone. I would like to also thank Professor Mahesh Jayavira, also generously supporting the token of appreciations for our speakers, and we really appreciate what you are doing this year. And I would like to thank Dr. Ruwan Kalubowila and his crew, the Technomedia Group from the University of Colombo Technology Faculty, helping us to reach the audience beyond these walls. You're doing it very smoothly, and we are really appreciating what you're doing at this moment. I'd like to thank Professor Sumesh Jayanthi, our President of Committee for IDTDS, for guiding all these activities. And of course, our General President, Professor Ramani, for always guiding us, coming here and encouraging us. Would like to thank our committee members, as always, for helping us shaping these events, coming, participating, and providing all the comments and suggestions that make these activities successful. With that, I would like to end my vote of thanks, and I would like to wish you a nice rest of the day, and hopefully that we will continue to have these kind of discussions through SLAAS and through SLAAS-IDTDS, and we will be able to make some contributions to the development of this country. Not just development, but sustainable development by all means. Thank you very much, and thank you again.